Hello and welcome to TectonicTakes. I'm one of your co-hosts, Ivan Ornelas, here with Will Schneider, and we would like to welcome a very special guest, the voice of the San Jose Earthquakes and the Soccer Hour on KMBR, Ted Ramey. How are you doing today, Ted?
What's up, guys? I'm good. How y'all doing?
We're doing great. Thank you. This was a great timed interview coming off a win against Real Salt Lake. So we're doing a little bit better than usual, but it's always great to have the chance to talk to you.
For sure. Yeah. And coming off a win is always good, especially a Wando Wednesday win when the old man puts two in the back of the net. And that's why I always feel like maybe my call up is coming, because I'm only 6 months older than Wando. And I'm like, if he's still out there scoring goals, and there might be some freak way in sports where I can find my way into a game somehow like that. There's like a 43-year-old emergency goalie in the NHL for Carolina found his way into a game. I'm like, there's that slight chance it might still happen.
Oh yeah, here's hoping. We got our fingers crossed. Will, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. No, I just want to let you guys have your little moment there, and I hope we can get Ted on as a super sub. Come in the late 90th minute, get a header in for us. That would be great. And yeah, I'm doing well. I really appreciate you coming on, Ted. I've tried to catch up on getting to know you a little bit, reading about, and you've dabbled everywhere, and obviously we're going to get to know you a little bit more. So I'm really excited.
Sure. Yeah, no, I like it. Any about time somebody wants to talk to me, because I've been on the other side of it, trying to book guests, trying to get guests for my own stuff. So I've always anytime anybody reaches out, I'm like, yes, I know exactly what you were going through, and I will do whatever I can, because I think people don't always realize, like, people see the finished product. They don't realize what goes behind that, and trying to schedule stuff and trying to make, because everybody has their own lives that are going every which way. And then when you can make it all meet together, you're like, yes, thank you. So like, whenever somebody, especially when they want to talk Quakes, I'm like, I'm there. I'm your man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can relate to that as a listener for a long time, listening to sports radio, podcasts, shows on ESPN or whatever. And everything looks so polished and fast paced and well rehearsed, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of commitment from a lot of people that are on camera and behind the camera and behind the scenes. And it's an incredible industry, and you get to be a part of it, and your hard work pays off.
At least you hope it does.
Yeah. All right. It's an exciting time. Just a couple games left for the Quakes and 2 to 3 left for the league as a whole. Are you excited for this end of the MLS regular season to unfold?
Yeah, man, I'm excited, and I'm nervous. I don't like the points per game thing that they've implemented, because listen, I don't have any ill will towards Colorado. I just think it's not fair for other teams like Vancouver or RSL, or, you go down the list of other teams that are right there on the brink to potentially get forced out by a team that played significantly less games. I don't have anything against Colorado, but it's like, they haven't played as many games. That doesn't seem fair to me. And I know that there's heavy conversations behind the scenes, I'm sure, that MLS was having with this. And I'm sure that influenced things, but I don't love it. So, I just hope that this works out for the Earthquakes, that they get in. I feel that the win against RSL last night was necessary, and they took care of business. I think they end now with two very, very good opponents. LAFC has Vela back, which makes them that much more difficult. And then there's the Seattle Sounders, who the Earthquakes, aside from that 7-1 loss, usually play pretty tough. We play them to draws or to the last minute of the game. So I'm excited but nervous. And I think that's what you want. I mean, if you like the 7-1 loss, you go back to that game and you tell me that at the end of the year, we're going to be fighting for a playoff spot with 2 games left, I'm stoked. So, because for a bit there, when you're losing 3 out of 5 games, it was a 7-1, then 2 draws, then 6-1 and 5-0 defeats. So that was heavy. And to be here it's pretty dope. I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you about how you felt about that point system that MLS came out with. But I mean, what would a little side note question instead is, what would you have done with the situation with Colorado in hand?
Oh, I would have tried to fill in games in that final 2-week period if it had been close to the number of games that the rest of the teams had played. That would have been one thing. And I think Colorado, it's like, even if they'd played a couple more games, they played 6 less games than the Earthquakes right now. I mean, that's a lot fewer games. And I think the other thing you would just do is that you would say, listen, I'm sorry, we're going to penalize the Rapids for this. And I think even penalize is too strong a term, but it's like, we're not going to hold this against RSL, or we're not going to hold this against the other teams which were scheduled to play them and missed those games. I think the only right move would have been to say sorry to Colorado. I mean, that's how it goes with a pandemic. They didn't do anything wrong. I'm not saying that they did, there were positive tests. That's the era in which we're living. But I kind of think I don't want to say like being let off the hook, because that has like a negative connotation, but I think that they have been given, an easier path than the rest of the teams. And I know that sounds callous, because saying easier when it's associated to the COVID is not necessarily, like, I don't know. It's hard. Like, I feel like anything I say negatively about Colorado is like kind of punitive, because you would think that like getting bogged down with the coronavirus is punishment in and of itself. I don't know, man. It's just a crappy situation all around. But I just, I kind of feel that the only way to do it would have been to try and fill in some games for Colorado. But I think ultimately the way that it should have gone was just to tell Colorado, sorry, you've played so many fewer games. But these are all above my pay grades. So
Yeah,
bigger and better minds than mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be really tricky to fill in games at this point, though, because just looking at the Quake schedule, for example, their last game is Sunday, November 8th against Seattle at CenturyLink Field. And then the following weekend, there are international games being played in the weekend of November 14th and 15th. So at most, they could fill in maybe one more game on the Wednesday, and that's about it. So I think their hand was a little bit forced there. I don't think they wanted to rule out Rapids entirely from contention, although it would have been consistent, because Nashville and FC Dallas, they were penalized by not being allowed to participate in the MLS's back tournament due to COVID situations. So it is what it is at this point. And I mentioned in the last podcast when we were covering the Whitecaps' victory over the Quakes that someone's getting screwed in this scenario depending on how they handle Colorado Rapids. Right now it's looking like it could be Vancouver, despite them beating San Jose Earthquakes and giving themselves a chance to qualify for the playoffs themselves.
Yeah.
And you just you empathize with them on one hand, but on the other hand, as people who are invested in the San Jose Earthquakes, you're kind of like secretly, not so secretly, because this is a podcast, relieved that maybe you're not the one being screwed. But it is really tough. Every point will count from here on out, and we just hope for the best.
Yeah, I mean, that's really all you can do. It's just all so weird, right? I mean, like, this is not how like a season's supposed to end. And I know that I'm not happy with that decision, but it's just, I mean, nobody was prepared for this at the start of the year. Like, these are all decisions the guys are making on the fly, and it just sucks, like I know that sounds so like obvious, but it does. Like, this is not how anybody wants to be deciding a season. You want to have everybody play 34 games. You want it to come down to the final day of the season to figure everything out. And you say, all right, we can look at our wins and our draws and our goal differential and, go through the tiebreakers and these things, and not have to say, well, we're going to go off points per game, even though they've played significantly less game because it's in the middle of a pandemic. I mean,
yeah.
Right.
And we've seen points per game in other leagues. I think in the lower leagues of England, for example, that it did alter the course of the results of that season. It affected which teams got promoted or relegated. So it does shift things. And there's a reason why that you don't do points per game. And the obvious reason being that leagues try to have a balanced schedule, but unfortunately, soccer in 2020 works a little differently.
Yeah.
So hopefully, whichever teams do make it to the playoffs, that they'll make sure that they give a good account of themselves when they do get to that point, and we don't go thinking, oh wow, this could have been avoided if a few things went differently.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that I would be really disappointed in is if you have Vancouver put together the necessary points, whereas if Colorado like wins one and loses one, and you start looking at, well, if you would, extrapolated the records, and it just you just hate to see somebody get burned in this situation. But like, you love to be able to bicker about soccer as your biggest concern, because like there's a lot of people in this country and worldwide that are being much more impacted by COVID-19, losing family members, losing friends, coworkers, etc. So like, I also try to look at it from that angle. It's like, okay, if my biggest gripe right now is Major League Soccer playoff decision making, like, I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
All right. So before we go on, we want to give a quick thanks to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, who sponsor all the podcasts here on the Beautiful Game Network. And before we get into the thick of things as well, we just want to take a second and thank all of our supporters of this podcast, whether you're on Patreon or not. But if you do want to become a Patreon member for early and exclusive content and more bonuses, you can go to www.patreon.com/TectonicTakes. And thank you so much for all of your support and for making this podcast possible. So we're now going to move on to a bit of a rapid fire segment. We're just going to Will ask you a few questions to get to know you, Ted.
Sure.
All right. So you ready? Here we go. All right. First question will be favorite Quakes player currently on the roster.
Wando, of course. Like I said, the fact that he's only 6 months younger than me. Like when I went to Northgate, he was at De La Salle. Like I was aware of his name. People talked about him. He's been around forever. He's just keeps on kicking ass. So yeah, Wando.
All right. And we'll go with your favorite former Quakes player.
Favorite former Quakes player. I can't break either Marvell Wynn or Joe Cannon's heart because they are, they're still part of the Quakes family, obviously. And I work with both of them. So I can't pick either of them. So I'm going to go with a recently departed member to the Quakes in Magnus Eriksson. Dude was, I think he was very underrated by Quakes fans. And I think the metrics kind of bore out that when the ball got to his feet in the attacking third, it went forward. It didn't surprise me that when he left the team that things kind of fell apart for a bit. And he's just a really nice dude. And I thought that he had great leadership qualities. He was always very nice to me. I got to do an interview with him on the first day that he joined the club, and just super chill and down to earth. And we kind of joked, because the band ABBA is from Sweden, and one of the dudes from the Earthquakes didn't know who that was. One of the young, really young workers. And Magnus looked at me, he's like, you know who they are, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, God, how old are we? He was kind of joking right off the bat. So I appreciated that. So yeah, but the sad thing is usually I travel with all these guys, and the broadcasters aren't allowed to travel right now. So I don't know if I'll ever see Magnus again. The last time I saw him was before Minnesota on March 7th. I was walking, beneath the game near where the players get up and stuff. I saw him, did the bro hug, whatever. And then, everything got shut down the next Thursday. And now he's back in Sweden. So it's kind of sad. I hope I will see him at some point in the future, but yeah, it's just, he was a good dude. So since I won't break Marb's or Joe's heart, I'll go with Magnus.
Sweet and sour there. Yeah, I guess you got to make a trip to Sweden. You got to have that final closure. Must needed. The next one we got for you is the favorite Quakes team.
Favorite Quakes team. I really like. 01 or 03 would be easy takes. I think that the 2017 team, just because that was the last one to get to the playoffs. That was the first one that got to the playoffs with me doing the play-by-play, and they really had a cool thing kind of going on. And it was kind of like the first glimpse we had of how good Jackson Ewell could be, of how versatile Tommy Thompson could be. Wando was still doing his thing. You still had Victor Bernardez on the club. Shea Salinas, of course, always getting it done. He had big goals that year. So yeah, that 2017 team. But it's like picking your favorite kid. It's not very easy to do. And it's you can't really come to a right answer. And I don't have a favorite child. for the record. But yeah, I mean, like that 2017 team, I have a lot of fond memories associated with, but I'm hoping that there's going to be some fond memories associated with this team as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all hoping that we're gonna have some fun memories with this year, especially how this year's been going. Next one would be your favorite Quakes jersey.
Ooh, probably the 2017 primaries. I thought those were pretty dope. And the ones we're wearing right now have grown on me a lot. I also liked those red secondaries from 2014. Those are pretty sick. But yeah, probably the 2017 primaries with the chevron. I guess that's what my wife tells me it's called. I don't know. I like that. The way the stitching went or the right. pattern. I guess it's called chevron. These are like things like that are way above my head in terms of like knowing like fabric patterns and things of that nature. But those were pretty sick, and I was kind of sad to see them go. But those are probably my favorites.
All right, so I see the love for 2017 for you is very special. But let's see, maybe your favorite Quakes moment maybe isn't in 2017. Or is it?
I mean, you can go. I mean, I have to. It's hard for me to separate the fandom because you think about the comeback against the LA Galaxy back in the day. But yeah, I mean, since like my being on the inside and working for the team since 2014, like yeah, 2017, like that goal against Minnesota United to send us to the playoffs, and then just the entire stadium erupting and literally causing a small earthquake and. Yeah, that one's hard to beat. And so that one, you know, I try to think of it in the frame of like, what has it been in terms of my experience versus who I was in 2001 or 2003 or, you know, whatever year you want to associate with great moments having for the Quakes. And that win against Minnesota, that's the one, you know, Ornelas scoring that goal. And just, of course, Wando was in on the assist. That was pretty dope. So it's hard to top. And yeah, we keep on coming back to this 2017 theme.
Hey, I mean, that's fine. I mean, like you said, it was one of like the most interesting years for the Quakes, like you explained. And I mean, yeah, that goal was, you know, it was crazy. It was electric, right? I mean, yeah. And so since you go to the stadium much more than we do, we got to know what's your favorite thing to eat there, of course.
Ooh, I'm going to disappoint you heavily with this answer. And I'm sure my bosses are gonna be like, what? But I don't think I've ever eaten any of the food there because they have a pregame meal for us for media, which is usually just, you know, like a burrito or pizza or sandwich or something. And that's usually there. And I actually don't really like to eat big before a broadcast. I'm paranoid of getting food poisoning because like there's no commercial breaks, you know, like if something tears you up in soccer, there's no like mid-inning 2-minute break. So I always I eat like very light before a game. I'll maybe eat like half of a sandwich or like one piece of pizza, a couple bites of the burrito if they have that or something like that. But no, like I would go get my wife, but I think she's watching TV that I've usually monopolized with sports watching while I'm doing this. Because when she's there with the kids and my parents, she'll get the food that's there. So she would probably have a better answer than I would. But yeah, I'm going with the classic. I'm a media member, so whatever they give me for free.
I mean, no one's going to complain about free food, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, okay. So I guess since you're not eating any of the food, I mean, and you're worried about getting food poisoning and that kind of stuff. So do you not drink anything carbonated then, right? You assume because you don't want to burp on air, nothing like that. You just strictly stick to water probably.
Yeah, water. And I mean, I have coffee in the mornings always. But yeah, I just stick with water. And I mean, I've never really thought about the carbonated stuff. But yeah, I mean, it just seems like water in that point because like, you know, like soccer broadcasting, it can be very much like you're kind of chilling and you're telling a story, but then things get very loud and very hectic very, very quickly because you can have just kind of a quiet back and forth and then suddenly a counter can break or something can happen and the volume has to go up very quickly and, you know, you put strain on your voice and pretty much everything that I've learned about vocal strains, like whenever it's close to it, no caffeine, just water. So I try and stick with that. Occasionally there's like ginger tea. If it's, I'll bring that to me on the road when we go to some of the colder weather locations and usually find some hot water and make some of that because it's anti-inflammatory. And so I'll sip on some ginger tea maybe before a game. But I mean, that's, you know, water with a little bit of, you know, it's water with some slight, I don't know, it's a root or whatever.
Yeah. Some tea form of tea.
Yeah.
So, for those who are wondering what a chevron pattern is, it is essentially a very 90-degree angle separated zigzag pattern.
This sounds right.
Yeah, something like that.
All right. So now that we've established that, we've hit all the important topics, we can talk a little bit about your life growing up. How was the soccer market or scene back when you were a kid? Did you grow up in the Bay Area or elsewhere?
Yeah. So just to like fill you in like full circle, like my dad was a sports broadcaster and still is. He's in his mid 70s now. He's semi-retired. But he did the earthquakes back in the NASL days, back in the 70s and in the early 80s before the league folded. And so like I was born in 82. So like for me from like 1982 to 1994, and I'll get you that point of why I referenced that year, like pretty much like my dad would always talk about like the old NASL days. He'd talk about Bestie and Pele and some of the other great names that were associated with world soccer and also came and played in the NASL. And then in 1994, I paid attention to when there was a big soccer event on TV, but not too much. It was just kind of like, it was because my dad worked for Stanford then. He was doing play-by-play for them, and he was working for KCBS, and he worked for the 49ers and did play-by-play, other odd stuff here and there whenever he was needed for stuff. So it was kind of like whatever my dad was doing, he would take me and my older brother, who's also a sports broadcaster, to his broadcasts, and we kind of learned by osmosis. But in 1994, that was when the World Cup came to the United States, and they played games at Stanford. And so my dad, as he was a sports, reporter, as in addition to it, he was saying that, Ted, that part of this was we're hearing they're going to start a new soccer league in the United States. And that's kind of what this is being used as the impetus for, and it's part of the deal. And so when Major League Soccer started up again in 1996, he did the Clash on TV. So he did their games, and he did them 96, 97, 98, 99. And then I think after 99, he went over to the WUSA for the Women's League because they wanted him to do the San Jose Cyber Rays. That was after the success of the Women's World Cup in 1999. So like I was all in on American soccer. And when there was big stuff on TV, my dad was usually intrigued by it as well because he had the soccer background. So I've like, until I was like 12, it was pretty much my dad talking about how cool the NASL was back in the day and what a shame it was that it folded. And then when Major League Soccer came back, I kind of got in on that, and was in on the earthquake or the Clash then because my dad was doing the games and we would go to the games. I was at the first MLS game ever because that game was nationally televised on ESPN. So my dad had the day off and he was with me and my brother in the stands at Spartan Stadium. So we went and took that in, and then I would go to other broadcasts with him and hang out in the press box, and same story with the WUSA. So like trying to describe like the soccer scene in the Bay Area in the, when I was like coming of age as a sports fan, which is like, you're like 8 and 10 years old. It's like, there wasn't a whole lot. Like you would read about some of the stuff that was going on in Europe in the paper sometimes, but like this was before the EPL had come over to the airwaves here, and you would get kind of occasionally some big international games, and you could turn on some of the Spanish speaking stations and catch some of their stuff. But it wasn't a huge part of the conversation other than like I said, these stories that my dad would tell me of, the NASL before it was really around, or before I was around, I should say. So when things got rolling in 1994, and then my dad started working for the then Clash at that point, like then it became a much bigger part of my life once again, and it never really left. So it was very, very different. It's not like it is today, and it's super cool what it is today. Like and I'm actually like I wish my parents had been more like kind of those crazy parents who had like told me what sport to play, because they ended up being like fast, like, and I was a slow ass kid, and then somehow I ended up being fast and ran track. But I was like fast-ish. I wasn't like, I was good enough to run high school track. I wasn't going anywhere after that. And afterwards I was like, why didn't you guys make me play soccer? I could have played fullback. I maybe could have gone and played at like a junior college. Like, I don't know, Ted, you wanted to run track. That was your thing. And I was like, yeah. I was like, I wish you guys had been crazy and made me be like, go be a fullback, Ted. You would have had a longer career, but it is what it is.
Right. It's 9-day difference. Like when I think of soccer in like the 90s and 80s, I think, well, it was definitely like a metamorphosis of sorts, particularly from the USA perspective, and how, looking at old videos and matches from the 1994 World Cup, it's one of the few instances in my life, along with other things in general that happened to the 90s, like Michael Jordan's like, oh, I wish I was born in a different decade, because that seems so exciting and incredible. I know like people from all over the world were shocked that the USA could produce such an incredible World Cup as
Yeah.
hosts. And even a few years later in 1996, San Jose being part of that first ever MLS game, a sold out Spartan Stadium for that match. And it's just incredible what was going on back then. And like now we kind of take it for granted because Premier League is this thing that it is now, whereas it didn't exist until 1992. And now, along with the Premier League, we have so many other leagues available to us through TV and streaming platforms and all these things. So it's an
Yeah.
incredible transformation and evolution that's occurred these last 30 years.
No, dude, it's wild. Like it's so much different. And like you bring up like the change of the official Premier League, what it is now. It's like the big soccer stories that you would hear about, like had to do with like hooliganism. Like you would hear about Hillsborough, and you could hear about some of the huge riots that took place in Latin and South America. And like there was this, you would hear stories like that as opposed to hearing about the great things that were going on otherwise in world soccer. So, like for me, like is like Hillsborough, you hear that story when you're like an 8 and 9-year-old kid, you're like, what the hell? Like that's like, you can't even wrap your head around it. It's a tragedy, but it's just like, that was like, you would hear those types of stories, sometimes like negative connotations. But yeah, like you said, like the 1994 World Cup was, incredible. And dude, like, that's why I think the 2026 World Cup, that's going to be like the greatest show on earth for 50 years. Like they're going to, like the idea of United States and Mexico and Canada all getting together on something has me just like that's, it's going to be amazing. Like assuming we're not all dead from the coronavirus, it's going to be amazing. Like I'm already buzzing off how cool that could be.
Right. I'm kind of looking ahead a few years, and I was thinking like not only that, but like 2023 with the Women's World Cup, with USA going for the three-peat, and it's going to be hosting Australia and New Zealand. It sounds like so exciting right now because that's like a 20-hour flight, and right now it's COVID, so travel's not really happening. So it's sounds like a different world right now, but it's something to look forward to, that 2026 World Cup for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, you kind of covered it with your amazing background with the involvement in soccer. The next couple questions we had for you, I mean, it's crazy that your dad was involved in this, and you kind of just been with him the whole way. And so the next kind of question we had for you was, how did you get your start with the affiliation with the soccer team?
So I had been working at KMBR, and I had done like stringer work for AP and ESPN radio before that, and I had done like small amounts like play-by-play and stuff back in like high school. Like people would ask me to be like, hey, can you voice stuff, and can you do like stuff for the soccer team? And I knew how to do it because I'd been around my dad and stuff, and I'd done like some slight stuff in the past with play-by-play, and had been doing sports talk, and had been doing sports updates, and been doing just as much stuff as you can in the sports world. You look for opportunities, and at that point I was filling in as a host on KMBR, and I was doing stuff on the Bone, and been doing stuff on Niners pregame occasionally, and Warriors pre and post game. And the Quakes were making a switch, and they reached out to me, and they said, was this something that you would be interested in? And I said yes, for sure, because trying to like keep it cool while like have not seen my head exploding. And so they had me come out and do a tryout, and I think they had some other people do some tryouts as well, and mine was the tape that they liked, and they brought me on, and it's been an incredible relationship ever since. Working for the Quakes, and like, I'm not just saying this as like a dude who's like, now I'm going to talk well about the company I work for. Like, it's awesome. Like I tell people, like, from me being a dude who was good enough at sports to play in high school, and then like that's where it ended. Like doing play-by-play, in my opinion, is like it's the closest you can get to actually like being in the game, because for me, like I'm performing. Like I have prepared for that moment. I have studied. I have done many of the things on like the other side of the spectrum. Like athletes prepare and they study and they watch film and they lift weights and they do all these things that, they train for the moment. And there's an aspect about play-by-play that's the same way. And you're in on every play and you want to describe it and you want to make sure that people have feel what's going on, and you have this opportunity to perform, albeit in a totally different way. There's no, like, it's not physical exertion other than like my throat gets a little tired at the end of 2 hours of broadcasting, but like you do, like it's performance. Like I want to make sure that like I can walk away at the end and be like, I feel good about that. Like I'm glad that people look at this or listen to it and say like, that was fun. And that I enjoyed listening to it. So, it is really, really fun to do. And like, it was so cool that they even offered me the opportunity in the first place. And like here we are, that was 2014 and now it's 2020 and, going strong, and, just the only thing that can slow us down is a pandemic apparently. So, you just keep on going in that direction. I'm going to turn my fan on real quick. The lights are making it hot in here.
One second. Go for it. Yeah. So Ted Ramey's affiliation with the club started in 2014. And even though during that time, the Quakes, as of now, only have qualified for the playoffs one time in that period, it still has been an exciting time. We've seen players called up for their international teams, playing World Cups, and it's been an interesting period of growth with a lot of good players coming in and out. And also from a league perspective as a whole, seeing the size of the league increase very exponentially, now at 26 clubs, and it's been an interesting ride.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly, to watch what the league has grown into and what it's continuing to grow into. Like, I mean, I think the sky's the limit. I've had this line that I've been telling people for a while, that I think that in a not too distant future, soccer and the NBA are probably going to be the kings of sports in the United States. And I think that the 2026 World Cup is going to go a long way in doing that. I also think that the growing popularity of the women's game and the NWSL, I think that's going to continue to push things forward. And I actually think that the 1999 Women's World Cup in the United States had a huge impact on the game here in the country as well, because everybody remembers Brandy Chastain ripping off her shirt and flashing the guns in the six pack after scoring the game-winning PK. And it was just like, it was like, that's one of those moments. Like you have all these different moments that have allowed, Major League Soccer that have helped it grow. Cause I think that when people, even if you become a fan of soccer because you watch Messi, like you still want to pay attention to the league then that's in your backyard. It's like like you can be a fan of Alabama football and still want to see what Cal and Stanford are doing, even though the Pac-12 is an entirely different entity ostensibly than, the SEC, because it's all part of the same picture. It's all part of the whole, narrative. And I think that while MLS is still in this growth stage, people, for whatever reason, whether it's been a Women's World Cup, whether it's been a different World Cup, whether it's been Champions League, whether it's been the EPL, having Major League Soccer here at the same time, concurrently, with all this huge growth in world soccer and the internet, and everybody's been able to engage more with what's happening worldwide, it helps Major League Soccer in the growth. Like I had a dude on the Soccer Hour I guess that was like a year and a half ago, young English dude. And he was talking about how his friends were enthralled by Major League Soccer because he was like, dude, you're watching Watford and Burnley. He's like, he's like, you watch that, and then you watch, at that point it was right. I guess this was early 2018 that I think about it. He's like, you watch that with El Trafico. He's like, and you have Zlatan Ibrahimovic scoring bangers from 45 yards out against LAFC. And he's like, that game was way more entertaining than most of what the EPL was that weekend. So he was talking about how like the American, like there's like, the American soccer snobs like, oh, Major League Soccer. No, I don't want to watch that. But he was saying like, I mean, it's like you that's entertaining. And like, I think that's where Major League Soccer is right now. Like, I'm not going to say it's on par with EPL or La Liga, because you just look at the money involved with the players, you do the simple arithmetic, it's not there yet. But I think that as you have more of the melting pot in the United States, more people who have a varied background, who have families that come from other parts of the world, they have more of that soccer background. I'll get into this more because I know you guys wanted to ask about Damon Bruce, but I think that those of us who are younger than 40, who grew up with more of soccer in the mainstream, who had Major League Soccer, who had the United States men's national team come to prominence, I should say, who had the EPL on TV, who had more world football, who had social media and the dissemination of content. It's allowed everybody to kind of be more aware of the world game, and thusly they are more aware of what's been happening with Major League Soccer. And it's one hand kind of feeds the other, and it's really cool to watch where it is right now, and then again where it's trending in the next decade. Because you think about where we were in 2010 and where we are now in 2020, what is this going to be like in 2030? Like that's where I'm just like, holy crap, because I don't think this train is slowing down.
I don't think so at all. And there's so many different tracks that keep expanding the ways of movement of the sport, and I'm just excited to be a part of it through this podcast and through every other way that I'm involved in the community. So it's great.
For sure. Like that's the thing, is like once, like you guys know, like once you're in and it like becomes like a responsibility, you get like that much more deeply invested in it. And it's also fun. Like you can definitely you force yourself down that rabbit hole, but it's fun.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All right. So then since you've been around the club for so long as a fan and as a part of the media, how do you feel about San Jose Earthquakes' growth and direction?
I feel good about it. I mean, that's not to say there haven't definitely been some speed bumps in the road like 2018. I think that the club is trending in a direction that I think is the right way. It's not been a linear as the crow flies straight ride. It's been kind of trying to wind and figure out where it's going to go. And, people want to be like, oh, well, look at this, that, and look at what this club is doing. And I'm like, yeah, but this is like, it's hard to gauge. Like, look at what the Galaxy are going through right now. Like the Galaxy are historically the franchise that has set the tone for Major League Soccer. And they are, in a death spiral. Like they can't do anything right now. And it's like, there's part of me which is like, cause I'm a Quake, but at the same time, I'm like, it's really not good. It's everything to me is also more fun when the Galaxy are at the top of their game, when they are more, as part of the conversation. That just makes it more entertaining. But yeah, I mean, it's not right now. It's a hard league. And I think that the Earthquakes have been finding their way through it. And I really like what Jesse Fiorinelli has been able to do. I think that 2018 was definitely, it was no good, but 2019, it came down to the last day of the season, which was, if it comes down to the last day of the season to make the playoffs, that's better than it not being that way, having experienced years like 2018. I think there are some things that kind of went against us down the stretch, like Wando getting a red card from the bench against Atlanta. That didn't help us.
That Atlanta game. Don't remind me about that Atlanta game.
Yeah, dude.
I kind of forgot about that till now.
Dude, I remember I like when that happened, I think I said during the broadcast, I think it was Chris Penso was the referee. I was like, has Chris Penso lost his mind? Like, I was like, just like what? Like, that was the first red card Wando ever got. And it was from the bench. Like, come on, you don't do that to the dude. Who's, like, if he's complaining, it's legitimate. So, there've definitely been rough spots. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat that, but I think getting Matias Almeida, I think that they're now trying to spend more money and get more impact players and trying to figure out how that money is best spent. And I think things are trending in the right direction. And I hope that this year, aside from here's the deal. Like when we look at those rough losses this year, 7-1, 6-1, and 5-0, like it hasn't just happened to the Quakes. Like LAFC did that to Vancouver. Portland did it to LAFC. RSL, either they blanked somebody 5-0 or they got blanked 5-0. I forget which it was, because there've been so many of these games like this. Like 2020, to try and compare, in a normal context is kind of hard to do, especially with the teams in California dealing with the wildfires at that same time, which was definitely impacting training. I think those were probably 4-0, 5-1 type blowouts as opposed to 7-1, so I think that definitely played a factor. So like, you do look at those games and you say like, oh, like obviously it's hard not to react and be like, holy God, what is happening here? But at the same time, it's like, okay, they go out there, they get Matias Almeida, they're bringing in guys like Rios, like Fierro, who they think can be impactful players. And I think that they're starting to make good on that promise. I think that the growth of the academy system and the homegrown players, guys like Cade Cowell, who looks like Alphonso Davies, in San Jose, like, dude, that guy, by the way, like I always say this, like looking at him when he first joined the team at 15 and now he's 17, I'm just like, dude, I never had a chance. Like he's just walking around like cut from marble and just like, it's such like a different level. And I'm just like, God, man, like he like just genetically different. And we watch him. So you see players like that. And, there's these rumors with Barcelona surrounding him, which if the Quakes end up moving him there and making that money and reinvesting in the club, I think that's all. If that's the plan, is to be a selling club and then use that to put more money into the academy system and also get in more quality players, then you like it. You like those things right now. And I think that hopefully the tougher times, 2018 is the one that really stands out, are behind the team and they keep on going forward in this direction. Because I think Matias Almeida was a huge hire. And I like where things are going. And then, the other thing I think that plays a factor as well is that the soccer they play under Matias Almeida is attractive. I know people were not fans of Dom Ball, and I have a great deal of respect for Dominic Kinnear, but his job in his mind was to go out there and get points. And he didn't necessarily care about how attractive the soccer was or whether it was, the prettiest brand or whether people wanted to label it an empty bucket. He was just going to go out there and do what he thought was going to get points. And that's what he was doing with the budget at the time. And he was pretty decent at it and has the pedigree to back it up. But I think right now, if people sit down and watch an Earthquakes game like they did in the MLS's back tournament, when they were a little bit more just kind of frantic and flying all over the place, it's toned down a little bit now. But it's still very attractive. People like the brand of soccer. And I think in addition to the player acquisition and building the academy, you want to be able to put something out there on the field that's attractive. You want something that people watch and are entertained by. And I think that that's part of it. And I know that's not as satisfying an answer to be like, oh, that they have spent X millions of dollars on players and done this. But it's like, when you watch the team play, are you entertained? And I think that definitely that is the case right now at the Earthquakes. They're good watch. They're fun and entertaining. So you hope that a year like 2018 is behind us. And the other thing is that Matias Almeida, with his whole take of it being a project, it kind of seems like that's bearing out a little bit. And a lot of people were skeptical of that when they were losing badly earlier this year. But it seems like now Carlos Fierro has found a little bit more of his role with the team. Same with Andy Rios. Same with Cade Cowell. Same with, you had Jacob Akinurich get in there. You've got JT Marcinkowski. He's now taking over the reins as the starter. You see more of the direction and more of, like, not to get too cheesy, but when you pour cement, lay the foundation, as it were, like, doesn't have a lot of shape at first. It, you see what they're trying to do, but it can be messy. And so now, which I guess that's a 2-part soccer joke. But it, it can now it's kind of taking shape. And I feel like it's been up and down, no doubts about that. But now you kind of see more of the idea and you want to see what they can do here and then think about what they can do next year and the year after. And I don't think Matias Almeida plans on going anywhere anytime soon. I know everybody's like, well, he's never lasted anywhere more than 3 years, or maybe it's 4 years, but I think it's 3. And then he moves off. But I think he likes it here in San Jose with his family. And I mean, dude, there's no better place to live in the world than the Bay Area. I mean, there might be places that are as good, but like the Bay Area is incredible. And so I'm sure he looks at this for his family and says like, yeah, this is pretty awesome. So long answer, but I do like the direction where things are headed.
Yeah, I think if you asked me or if anyone was asked this question at 5 or 6 different points of the season, the answers would have all been different. And it's been a roller coaster ride to say the least. But I think now that we start to see them turn the corner from that horrible spell, that we can see exactly like, okay, this is Matias Almeida's system, why he wants to play this way, why these players are in this team for a reason. And it's definitely a different feeling than Kinnear ball. And with managers and clubs where they play unattractive soccer, like think of Burnley or Stoke City or whoever, that if your goal is to get points, you got to be damn sure you get points as often as possible, because that's all you can hang your hat on. You can't say, oh yeah, come to the stadium, we're going to play great passing soccer or football over there, but that goes out the window. You definitely put the pressure to get the points, and there's going to be points in any club's history where they're going to be hard to come by, and that's where things went south for Kinnear, and that's where things looked like they were going south for Almeida. But now we're in a fighting chance for the playoffs, and you can't ask for much more.
Yeah, I think with Kinnear though is like people forget that those teams that he won with in Houston, which were essentially Earthquakes teams, is like they played really attractive soccer. Like Dom, when he has that level of talent, he's able to put it together. And I was tweeting about this earlier today in light of the firing of GBS in LA. At the end of that 2018 season, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, like no slouch, right? Like he said, I think this team should hire Dom Kinnear as the coach. And why the LA Galaxy didn't listen to him, I will never understand. It's like, now who's the head coach again of the Galaxy? Dom Kinnear. What have they done over the last 2 years? Nothing. Like what? Like Zlatan Ibrahimovic wanted Dom to be the head coach. If Zlatan says Dom should be the head coach, that's what you do. And instead, they brought in GBS. But listen, I'm sure he's a nice person. I did not like what he was doing with that Galaxy team. Like they were so disorganized, and they have some talent out there. I don't know what's going on with Chicharito. That dude, good. I have no idea why that hasn't worked in the slightest. But like Pavone, Leggett, Corona, like those are good players. Bingham's a good player. Yeah, Sasha Kleshchen, an MLS veteran who can go out there and get things done. They have a lot of good players, and I don't know why it's not better. And it was just so disorganized. It was like, okay, get it to Leggett or Pavone, and then get it to Chicharito. Okay, nothing there. Try that again. Try that. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, what if they had put Dom in charge of these teams after 2018? I think Zlatan Ibrahimovic might even still be there. I don't know. It's hard. And again, there's tons of stuff that goes on, and I don't want to pile on Guillermo Barros Schelotto because he's a smart guy, well-respected, obviously, but I just found myself miffed. And I'm a Zlatan guy, by the way. Like I find all of it is just hilarious. Like I find him to be like hilarious, entertaining. And if you look at the stuff that he's done behind the scenes for like charities and helping clubs, like just a good dude. And I just found it amazing. I was like, he just told you to hire Dom and you go and hire somebody else. Like, what are you doing? Like, I found it stunning. But yeah, I mean, I understood the criticisms of Dom Ball. Like it was the teams that he had here in San Jose were not the most talented. He had him in the chance to make the playoffs the last day of the season in 2015. And then in 2016, it was a lot of injuries and it was just no good. And then in 2017, I think the team was in second or third place, but he was a different coach than what Jesse Fiorinelli wanted. And that's how it goes in sports. When a new GM comes in, you might not be the guy. And we see that in the NFL most definitely all the time. So, Jesse wanted to make a change, and that's what they did. And Leach led him to the playoffs, similar points per game average. And that was that season. But yeah, again, if Zlatan says hire Dom, like you should probably hire the guy. And then now it's just a mess, and Dom's in charge again.
Yeah, I think Zlatan is a very fascinating mercurial personality. How many players can get away with, well, a lot of the things he said, but one that sticks out to me is he made a YouTube video once where he was asked to name his all-time starting 11 of players he's played with. He puts himself in it, of course. He says the best for last. And it's like, of course, that's a very Zlatan thing to do. But it's almost like, to tie back to something I'm sure everyone watched during this pandemic, The Last Dance. Michael Jordan, has his preferences for his coaches, and a big reason for that dynasty ending was Phil Jackson not being renewed regardless of the result. And congratulations, you pissed off your star player.
Yeah.
And now when he's gone, where are you? And Zlatan's gone, and now they have the MLS and Christian Benteke, who is not getting it done. And I'm sorry to say that about Javier Hernandez. Along with San Jose Earthquakes, I'm a Manchester United and a Chivas de Guadalajara fan, so I've seen Javier Hernandez play incredibly well. And right now, he's just like a shadow of his former self. I don't know what's going on. And I'm hoping, as much as I don't want the Galaxy to succeed, because that usually means bad things for the San Jose Earthquakes, I'm hoping he turns it around and he can remind everyone why he's a good player for club and country at his best.
It's hard. And because he's not, he's kind of got that Wando sense about him where he's a poacher. Like, you don't look at him to create, but it's like Leggett is very good. Pavone is very good. And it's like, why aren't they creating things for him to respond to? It was very weird watching that team, man. Like, it was so disconnected. And I also felt bad for David Bingham, who I know that he's a polarizing guy in Earthquakes lore. And I always got along with him very well. He was always nice to me. And he had a good run of form there with Dom Caneri. He was on the national team, made it, got called up, was looking pretty good. And I like the lack of defensive organization was hurting that team and put him in a lot of bad spots. And it just, that's the thing about pro sports, man. Like, there's like, for me, I'm sitting here blaming, GBS or saying, why didn't they hire Dom and all these things? But like, there's a million things that happen behind the scenes that we don't even get sniffs of, like there's only people have come to me, they're like, so Ted, what's going on with X, Y, and Z with the Earthquakes or the Sharks? And I'm like, I don't know. They tend not to tell the guy with the loudest voice in the room all the darkest and deepest secrets, because it's just like they keep these things close. They play it tight. They don't tell the world. And that, dude, look at the 49ers. Like John Lynch, when he signed on with them, he was so concerned about the leaks there that he said, if anybody finds out I'm in the running for this, I'm not going to take this job. So like leaks and things that get out, like nobody knew, like, and that was weird because everybody had heard about everything they thought, and it was completely out of the blue and had been going on for a while. Like, that's how sports are. Like, everybody thinks they know everything until they realize, oh, I didn't know anything at all. And that's including me as well. And I'm someone who's relatively on the inside. Like, there's only so much that you're privy to. And then there's those talks among the, the owners and the executives that are just there. And it's an interesting dynamic. And, that stuff like that. And I'm sure with the players and the coaches has gone on that we'll never hear about. And it's just like, the one thing I don't like is how people like Chicharito's earned his spot. Like, he's done what he's done for the Mexican national team for a reason. There's no reason to think of him as a guy who's quote unquote dogging it. Like, he's only, I think, 32 years old. I think he's still got a lot of life left in those legs. And I don't like people, I don't like that we're all put in this position to kind of speak ill of the guy, because for me, if the United States are team number one, Mexico on the national stage is team number two, because I grew up in the Bay Area. It's, there's a huge Mexican community here. They're also geographically right next to us. That's why when people got mad at Landon Donovan, I was like, but like they're our ally. I understand that when we play them, they are the enemy, but otherwise, like, I feel like we have so many Mexican Americans everywhere. It's like, how am I supposed to look at my friends who are of Mexican descent and not want to be along with them and root on, their heritage and their background? Like, I felt like most of them, when the United States were playing in games that didn't involve Mexico, were also rooting for the United States. Like, it's this weird dynamic. And I don't like kind of like talking Chicharito, because he's an incredible player. He's the all-time scorer for Mexico. He's awesome. But it wasn't working. Like, you watch that team and you would be like, what on earth am I looking at? So, it's like I said, I know that the Galaxy being good is not what we want as Quakes fans, but it's also like, I feel like things are more, I want there to be a situation again where the Earthquakes and the Galaxy are going head to head in big games, just like it is with the 49ers and the Seahawks again now, as it was, when Harbaugh was there, just as you want it to be with the Giants and Dodgers. I mean, you want the Sharks and the Knights in these games. Like, you want these hated rivals to go at each other because you get classic moments. And so, like, hopefully maybe next year you get that. Yeah. I mean,
we'll find other teams to hate if it's not the Galaxy, but I get your point. You want to say anything? Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, I don't know what to say after all that. I mean, you guys broke it down perfectly. Next thing you know, we're gonna have Chicharito on the Quakes, and everything's gonna be just fine. But I mean, I guess kind of moving on from away from Chicharito, and we just kind of wanted to get to know what your pregame rituals are as you prepare for a broadcast for KNBR.
If it's a home game, I'm usually up early because I'm stoked. I'm out of my mind. And then I take that up to the next level by slamming coffee. And it's like leading up to the game, like earlier in the week, I watched 2 or 3 previous games, especially if they're available on ESPN Plus or if they're on Fox Sports 1, I'll try and record it. I do all my prep work. I use mailing labels as my notes for kind of my broadcast board where I'll have the formation of the team in front of me. I set that up when the lineup comes out. But the day of, after I've done all that prep work, I'll drink my coffee after getting up early. And I mean like 5 a.m. And you can go back, you'll see like social media posts I've made at like 5:30. And it's like just me like up drinking coffee, like, oh, Quakes. And I do that. I'll usually work out and I'll kind of get out some flashcards and bust over some data and some numbers to kind of go over things again. Nothing too crazy, just kind of hanging out. And if I have time, I'll watch some of the other games that are going on. Like the best for me is when the EPL is on early, because then I can drink coffee and watch some of the EPL games and get ready. And then I'm usually like right now, I don't get to the stadium super early just because there's no fans there. There's no slowdown getting in. But when it's a normal game, I'm there about 4 hours before kickoff. Right now, I'm there about 2 hours before kickoff, but I get there 4 hours before and I set up and test anything because my opinion is that if I set up everything and I have an opportunity to fix it, I should try. Like if that means I have to go to Fry's or some other electronics store, something because of, wire, cable, piece, whatever, I give myself the opportunity to fix it because I engineer my own broadcasts. So that's one of the reasons I get there so early is to make sure everything works. And then sometimes I do some stuff with season ticket holders before the games. We've done some speaking engagements with Chris Leach, with Jesse Fiorinelli, with some of the kids in the academy system. And those are for, like I said, season ticket holders and people that are involved with the earthquakes, things of that nature. Sometimes they have me kind of give people a little walk around the press box and the TV booth and the radio booth and show them what goes on during the broadcasts and things of that nature. But there's no like hardcore ritual. I warm up my voice. I do little like vocal exercises. You don't want to hear me do them, but I do like little things of trying to get the voice warmed up. But yeah, nothing too crazy. Like I prepare myself pretty well during the week. And the thing about that is that you do all this prep, you have all these notes and you have all these cool facts. And rarely does it ever work out to where the dynamic of the game actually leads you into that discussion. So like if you have 100% of your information, you'll be lucky if you're able to work in 15% of it. And it's an incredible day if you can work in 20% of it. Mostly it's between 5 and 10% of the notes and facts and little random stuff that you have that you're able to work in, because so much of it in radio is identifying who has the ball, what they're doing, what time of the game it is, and what the score is. Like you just, it's like TV, you can sit back and if they're just kind of, moving it around in the middle third, you can tell a story about a player a little bit more. But if I do that while somebody's listening on the radio, they're going to be like screaming in their car, like, Ted, what's happening? What's the score? So like, I try to do that and not rely as much on the stories and the other thing. But yeah, I mean, like my game days are pretty chill, just kind of do everything it takes to make sure the broadcast goes off without a hitch. It's like I said, coffee, watch some EPL, go over some flashcards, work out, get ready and go to the game and just kind of get ready. I don't like the look of people in a hurry. Like when I'm at the airport, I'm one of those people who was like, get to the airport super early. Just because I see people in a hurry at the airport and I'm like, I don't want to look like that.
It raises your blood pressure.
Yeah. Like they look bad. Like they're just like people like sprinting for planes and like carrying their luggage and like spilling coffee and dropping stuff. Like even if it's an airport or like anything else, I'm like, I don't want to look like that. I just want to show up early, take care of my things and just chill until the game gets ready to go, because it's just, again, it's everything's so much more chill that way. Like just get there, set it up, make sure we're all good. Once we're all good, I can just do my thing and get ready for the start of the game.
All right. So, and you covered a lot of how you prepare yourself for the game. So I'll now ask you, how you practice saying new names on the broadcast, because especially in MLS, which features players from all over the world, it can be pretty tricky sometimes. And you're thinking, oh no, this isn't some Scrabble board. This is a name. So like, how do I say it?
The thing that you want to do is go listen to a broadcast. The problem is
Right.
you don't get to pick the broadcast that you listen to, because sometimes it'll be a visiting or the other team's broadcast. And if they're not talking there about their own players, they'll get a pronunciation wrong. Or you hear something, you're like, I don't know that that's how that's pronounced. So usually you can find a home broadcast and figure it out that way. Other times, I have called other broadcasters on other teams and we'll have talked about it. Some of the broadcasters in the league I know now pretty decently, like Richard Fleming with Colorado. I consider him a friend now. Brian Dunseth with RSL. I consider him a friend. So like if there's anything going on or a question I have, I can text them or ask them, call them real quick and have those natures. But also we're lucky here in the Bay Area because we are so used to names of so many different backgrounds, particularly Spanish speaking backgrounds. So like when you see some of these names and you see some of the things that might throw off somebody who's not from a Spanish speaking community, I think we have a little bit of a leg up here. So that's nice that like you don't get thrown off by Enyes or double L's, and you have met friends from Brazil and things of that nature. So you have a decent understanding of how it's supposed to be said. So yeah, I mean, there's a number of different ways you can do it. And then, you know, you can say it once or twice. And like, the thing is like sometimes your brain just screws up and you like have figured out how to say it, because there are some tricky names. You figure out how to say it, you go to say it in the game. And like one time out of like the 30 times you say it in the game, it just comes out completely wrong. And you're like, what the hell, man? Like where did that come from? But you know, just find out a way to get the pronunciation and assume you do it right. And even if you're doing it wrong, just say it confidently, because it's better to say it wrong confidently than to say it. It's like, if I was Obafemi Martins, if I said it confidently, it would be like, you know, it's Obafemi Martins, obviously, but say it confidently wrong. It sounds better than saying it till you make it. Yeah, exactly. Like do it, like make it sound like you know what you're doing. Because I've heard in broadcast, not in soccer, but just any sports, you'll hear a guy kind of stumble over a name. And having been there before, just because sometimes your brain just farts or whatever, you would be like, okay, just say it with confidence. It'll sound better that way. And even if you get it wrong, somebody might tell you, but you know, like you just deal with it. But yeah, I try to make sure that we know. And then also usually 2020 is totally different, but usually the visiting broadcasters there as well before the game. So if you're still not clear on something, you can ask them and try and get it cleared up. So there's a number of ways to do so. But still, clearly, if you listen to some broadcasts, and I'm sure, like I said, I've screwed up, and then other broadcasters around the league, you hear them say something, you're like, that's not how it's pronounced. Like, so you know, it happens to the best of them, and to me as well. So I try not to crush guys when they do it.
Yeah, I think that's the advice I give to my students. I've taught communication studies classes at San Francisco State University, and I'm doing so now at Community College in San Diego. And everyone gets nervous when they have to do public speaking sometimes. So I just tell them, fake it till you make it. Like, obviously, do your best to prepare beforehand your information. You don't want to give people wrong information. But when it comes to like names and words, pronunciations, sometimes that's the best you can do. But also, I know that my answer for learning how to say names of certain players that would be otherwise difficult, playing FIFA. I think that's my way out of jam sometimes.
That's a good answer.
Yeah, go ahead, Will.
Sorry, no, I didn't know if we were still going to be on the FIFA, but yeah, no, I mean, I definitely would use FIFA as a great resource as well. But
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about, you know, having mistakes or possible mistakes with names. We're kind of curious if you ever had like a mistake on the air that you really kind of caught yourself that you're like, wow, that was not a.
When I was doing updates for Damon Bruce, I somehow said my name wrong. I'm serious. Yeah. Like, no. And even like Damon like came in like on air, was like, did you use mispronounce your name? I was like, yeah, I did. And like, there's like things like that. Like you just want like Joe Hughes, who worked with me at KMBR as well. And now he's at KCBS, same as me. We like joke about the mistakes. Cause like like, it's just weird. Like your brain just screws up sometimes. And you're like, how many times in my life have I said, hi, I'm Ted Ramey. I'm Ted Ramey. And I don't even know what I said, how I pronounced my name in that instance. but I just screwed it up. And like, that's the one that's like, dude, you got your name wrong. Like, what the hell, man? So yeah, that's probably the one that I would look at the most. Otherwise, no glaring mistakes. Well, there was the one time that I did drop an S-bomb on air, but we had the dump button. It was when Adrian Peterson had been, I think that was in the story broke that he had abused one of his children. And I just said like, that's some messed up like that. Just because like that was like my natural reaction to it. And then I saw the guys at the booth like looking at me like, I was like, oh, hit the dump button, which there's a 7-second delay. But like that was just my natural reaction. And like that's what they want in radio. They're like, we want to make it feel like there's just a microphone that's dropped into the room to get your candid thoughts. And like, you got my candid thought. Like I thought that was some messed up S. I straight up said that on the air. So that wasn't necessarily a mistake other than the fact that I could have gotten the station fined. But you know, that's just more of a humorous tale as opposed to me literally not being able to pronounce my own name. So that probably takes the cake.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think anyone that would mess up their name on the air would be pretty up there on any time messing up on broadcasting.
Oh yeah. So now that we went from one end of the spectrum, we'll go to the other. What was your favorite call for the San Jose Earthquakes?
Like the favorite one that I did?
Yeah, that you've done.
Oh, it's a good question.
Has to be 2017, right?
Well,
I mean, I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I would immediately go to that call of Shea Salinas' goal in the Classico, but also being able to call Wando's all-time goal scoring record. That was pretty dope too. You know, that was pretty awesome. You know, because that one got played on you know, some radio stations, and they played it with the highlight on, I think, on like Sports Center and then like Fox Sports 1.
Oh, nice.
So that was cool. And then also my call for Shea this year for scoring the game winner against Vancouver in the MLS is Back tournament. They used that on Fox Sports 1 broadcast the next week to kind of come into the intro of the game. So I was pretty proud of that one. I didn't see this one in the notes. This is a tough question. Yeah, I got to go with the Wando just because like that's history and you know it's coming. You don't want to screw that one up, and I felt like I got it right. So
there you go.
That's probably my favorite call for the Quakes. That was cool. And just Wando's a badass, you know. So it was fun to be a part of that. Have a minuscule part of his history and Major League Soccer history.
Right. No, I mean, definitely. And I kind of wanted to, I mean, question was on notes, but since you're talking about this and you're talking about hearing yourself, you know, these calls, does it kind of like, you know, when you kind of hear a broadcast call and it's something great and something crazy, you kind of get the chills, you know, you kind of get that feeling. You're like, oh, it just happened. You know, do you kind of get that feeling, you know, when you hear yourself after making a great call like that or something? Yeah.
I mean, I always, for like 99% of what I do, and I was relieved to hear that Kevin Harlan, you know him from TNT and Westwood One, like he has the same reaction as me, and that we hate 99.999% of everything we do. And that's just always how it is. Like I always like, even when I think I have a good call in the moment, I'll go and listen to it. And I'm like, oh, it's crap. And I know I'm way too harsh on myself because I've had people who I don't just think were BSing me come and be like, hey, dude, I thought that was a really good call. And because I know I'm way too harsh on myself. But like, there have been times like when you remove yourself, like when they went back and played my goal call for Shea Salinas' goal in the Classico. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. Like I didn't like it at first, but then later I saw it again. I was like, you know what? That's good. That's good. I like it. That works overall. Like I was pleased with that. Same thing for Wando. Same thing for, you know, there's been some other goals and some other moments and some other plays that have come in there, but like, usually in the immediate aftermath, I listen to my broadcasts sometimes on the way home and I'll just be like, God, what are you doing, Ted? You should just quit now. And I know it's crazy. And like my dad laughs at me because he's, you know, a sports broadcaster as well. So he gets it. You know, and he's always like, Ted, I would tell you. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I just, you know, like there's just that thing where you're just, I don't know, like you never get used to hearing yourself as much as you listen to yourself. Like it just always, you have a biased take on yourself. And like, I also don't want to lose that. I don't want to be like, oh, that was good. Like I never want to be like in love with my call in the immediacy. I always want to strive to be better. Like I take it very seriously to make it good and entertaining and fun. Cause and I alluded to this earlier, like I'm performing, but like there's an aspect of it because it's broadcasting, it's performance art. And I'm not trying to like self-aggrandize myself or make it sound like bigger than what it is. Cause like I'm screaming at players on a field, passing and shooting and doing the normal things. But it's like, you want it to like, you arm yourself with these tools of knowing their names and knowing their numbers and describing what they do. And like, I've heard so many guys in broadcasting, and it's very subjective, obviously, where I hear them and I'm like, what, regardless of history, I'm just like, I'm not in love with what they're doing. And so like when I'm making a call, I want to make sure that people listen to it or enthralled and they have a visceral emotional reaction. Because in the moment, I'm always having that reaction. I'm trying other than my dad, who's obviously the biggest influence you could ever possibly have. My favorite broadcaster is the dude who just retired from the NHL in Doc Emmerich. He's a very polarizing broadcaster. Some people don't like him, but I think he's great because he's so emotionally involved and you're excited with the ups and the downs and the ebbs and the flows. And I get that with Kevin Harlan as well. I'm a big fan of both Randy Hahn and Dan Rusanowski. Obviously, in the Bay Area, we're spoiled. There's so many good broadcasters everywhere. And they're just, and like a lot of them are friends with my dad, so I don't want to leave anybody out. But, we have great broadcasters here and all of them are amazing. That's what happens in a major market like this. You get good broadcasters, but like I've heard broadcasters in other big markets where I've been like, this isn't doing anything for me. Like the guy sounds bored while he's doing the broadcast. Like I never want to sound like somebody who's not emotionally involved. I want people to listen to it and be like, yeah, Ted's emotionally involved. Even if I hate the call myself, I always know that in the moment I was emotionally involved. My critique of it is different than what the actual projection of the moment is. Because I always know that even if I hate what I said or how I called it, I can at least feel confident that the people listening knew that I was emotionally involved in the game and not just some dude who was there for a paycheck.
Right.
No, definitely. I think I will go on to the next question, but I just wanted to follow up real quick. It's just amazing how, you're critiquing yourself. You're not satisfied, with usually your end result most of the time. It doesn't really sound like you ever are. Which is just, it's just great to know that, you definitely keep yourself humble and, you're not like, oh yeah, that was easy. No big deal. All job
well, I'm
done,
sure you guys are like this though. Don't you listen back and you're kind of like, I could have said that better. I could have made that better. Like, that's kind of like what happens, right? Like we're having a good conversation and I'm enjoying this, but I guarantee both of you guys will go back and be way harsher on yourselves than I could ever be. Like that, or anybody listening would ever be.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I definitely will probably. Yeah. So that makes sense.
All right. So the next question we have is, how do you like doing the play-by-play calls for the Cali Clásicos on Univision? Is it a bit of a different experience or a challenge on a Spanish language network? Or?
So what they did for that was they did it just a couple of times where they would take our radio feed for the international broadcast, which I think was going to like 100 and some odd countries. But it was weird because I was like, they didn't like, it wasn't like synced up with the team. It was in real time, obviously, but like, I didn't know what camera angles they were going to. I didn't know what they were doing. They're like, we're just going to take your call. And I was like, should I change it from a radio call to more like TV? I was like, because it might seem kind of nonstop for TV because you kind of lay back a bit in TV as opposed to being on top of radio. And they're like, no, don't just do what you normally do. But it was a little bit nerve wracking to be like, they're going to use this English broadcast for 100 and some odd countries around the world. Like it was very much like, okay, there's a lot of people that could potentially hear this. Like it was a little bit intimidating, but it was cool. And later on I was able to get the feed of it and watch how it sounded. And like, it didn't always sync up with what, like sometimes I'd be talking about the game and they would be showing a replay. So it would be a little bit off in regards like that, but it was just cool because it was like, there's people who are watching this game in, Ireland or wherever, and they're going to hear me doing the broadcast. Like the idea of being able to reach people in different communities and be associated with it, that's super cool. Even though if it was like a little, at times, I'm sure it seemed a little clunky, but when you get the opportunity to do something like that, you're just like, awesome. Like, this is cool. But again, it was like, ooh, a lot of people are going to be listening to this. Don't screw up, Teddy. Just do it well.
Right. So, yeah, that's incredible that it was broadcast to so many different countries and so many emotions flood through when that happens.
Yeah.
Pride, excitement, nervousness. So, props to doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the next question is, since we're all loving about the San Jose, which team are you more of a fan of? I mean, I have this kind of same issue as well, since I'm a big Sharks fan. So who do
Hmm.
you got? Sharks over Earthquakes, or Earthquakes over Sharks?
I will just put it right down the middle, just because I don't want to anger either fan base.
Fair
But
enough.
I will say that it is the San Jose teams and then everybody else in the Bay Area. Whereas
Yeah.
growing up, probably my favorite team was the 49ers. Like that was like
Mhm.
my biggest one. Like, because I had like a couple heroes in sports. Like I ran track. Like I wanted to be Michael Johnson. Like he was like my guy. And then like Steve Young and Jerry Rice were my two other guys who I like worshiped on the earth. So like the 49ers were that team. But then, like I said, when my dad started doing the Clash again in 1996, it was like, oh, like suddenly it was like you're associating. And my dad worked for the 49ers too as the in-stadium announcer. But like that was different. Like it was him, like when you watched a Clash game on TV, it was my dad on TV. It was like it changed my perspective on the team. And then he stopped working for them in 1999 when he went to those Cyber Rays. But I still had that affiliation and that genuine love. And then I always, because the Sharks came in when I was 9 years old, and like there was like it was the buzz about them. It was like right from the start. It was like there was a new team, and I'm gonna like be on from the ground level up with them. So like it was, you have all these different competing teams, but now it is the San Jose teams and everybody else. But just to not anger either fan base, just not that I think anybody would pick a bone per se, but I don't want it to somebody like, hey, why are you like this one more than the other? So yes,
Yeah.
they are equal at the top.
Yeah, that makes sense. Much like how the Sharks Twitter account that they show love to both 49ers and Raiders when the Raiders were in the Bay Area and the A's and the Giants.
Yeah.
Even though people who happen to see the tweet of not their team but don't check the timeline are like, "Hey, why are you being nicer to them than my team?" And it's like, "Dude, they tweeted for your team too. Don't worry."
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for me personally, so I view hockey in a similar way as like a lot of the USA feels about soccer, or like during the regular season or club competitions, and they maybe hear a thing here or there, and then maybe they check an ESPN notification or something. But like when the playoffs, the NHL playoffs for me are like the World Cup for general public US soccer. Like I'm all into it. Like I'm enjoying the fights, all the different like overtimes and all that. And it's like, oh man, this is so intense. Like it could be like that one game this year between, I think it was the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Tampa Bay Lightning, with that went to 4 overtimes. I think that was nuts.
Yeah,
So,
I think that. Yeah, I mean they played 2 1/3 games. Like it was insane. Like you get stuff like that. Yeah, it's Stanley Cup playoffs are amazing. It sucked that the Sharks weren't a part of it.
I
Let's
know.
not get started there. I think we could have. I'm a big Sharks fan, and like I said, I could have my own podcast and start talking about the Sharks all by myself in a rant. But let's not get started there. But I do have to say that like being at a Sharks playoff games, I've been like a somewhat the 10-pack season holder, for a while with me and my dad, and we've been fans since I've grown up. So hockey's been there forever. But yeah, Ivan, if you have a chance to go, I don't know if you have, to a Sharks playoff game, the atmosphere it's electric. It's one of its own. I can't explain it.
To tie it back to soccer,
Right, sorry.
one of my favorite Sharks game was when it was the playoffs and the iconic Brandy Chastain opened the bench doors for the Sharks to come on out. That was so much fun.
And I want to say Wando's done it too. I don't know if he did it last year or the year before, but I know he's opened it up. Yeah, dude, it's so cool. Like it's just fun. Like that's the thing is like, and part of that's all the fans being in the building. Like that's what sucks. Like right now, like going to Earthquake Stadium for games with the fans and being a part of everything. It's the coolest thing in the world. And same thing for the Sharks. Like it's the coolest thing in the world. And right now, like last night, I broadcast that game against RSL. There's nobody there. Like it's not normal. Like it's just like it's still awesome because you're you get the guys out there and they're playing their hearts out and they're working hard and the game is in front of you. But like when you don't have all the fans there, you don't have that buzz. Like there are moments when you walk in and it's like electric. You can feel everybody brimming with excitement, whether it's opening day, whether it's decisioning day, whether it's a playoff game, whether it's a rivalry game. Like,
oh yeah,
you don't have that now. Like it sucks. It's like my grand, all my brain could eke out about the situation with Colorado. Like it sucks. And I play it the same way here.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. I'm your usual co-host, Favi. I wasn't able to make this interview, but that's it for part 1 of the Ted Ramey interview. Part 2 will be coming soon, so stay tuned. Go Quicks.